how you should think before the biggest competition of your life. If you want to have the right mindset, you got to be thinking the right thoughts. One of the worst things you could do in the biggest competition is to think about it being a big competition. I've said it many times. You want to treat every competition as important, but nothing special. Everything's important, nothing special. You should treat all practices the same, all competitions the same. The same amount of focus, the same amount of intensity, and also the same amount of fun and looseness. That means you got to do some thinking ahead of time. You got to plan out. That's one of the big things we do with our athletes with winning mindset. We plan out ahead of time exactly how you're going to approach your practices, your competitions. So you know what you're thinking. You know what you're going to be telling yourself. You don't make it into a big deal. Everything's important, but nothing special. We see this with the top athletes. Watch after interviews in the Olympics, Super Bowl, the World Series, the Stanley Cup, the NBA championships. What are most athletes saying? I was just treating it like any other competition. I was just being me. I was just doing my thing. I was just doing what I always do. That's how the top athletes think. They treat it the same as every competition. And that's why in the championship, they rise to the occasion. It's not so much that they're doing something extra in the championship. It's not so much they're doing something different as much as it is they're bringing the same level of intensity. They're focusing on the same factors in all competitions. And therefore, when the stakes are high, they just do what they always do. Because when stress comes, we're most likely to revert back to our most practiced behavior. I'll say that again. Whenever we feel stress, whenever we're feeling the maximum amount of stress, we tend to revert back. We switch back to our most practiced behavior and also our most practiced mindset. So we need to practice our mindset. We need to know exactly what we're thinking and feeling before every competition. That's why when you think about rivalry games, rivalry competitions, never think about having a rival. Because what happens a lot of times, we give them too much respect, we get in our head too much, and a lot of times in rivalry games, you see one team lose to another team that they had no business losing to. But because in their head they changed the circumstances. This is a big competition. This is really special. They did worse. Okay, so never make a competition special. You never want to say this is a big game or this is a small game. This is a big match, this is a small match. They're all the same. So it starts in practice, and it really starts with your mindset. It starts with your mindset training. We need to put down a plan. We need to write it down. Thoughts, feelings, and emotions need to be consistent before every competition. So when you go in the championship game, when you go against your rival, you're not in your head. You're not going to choke. You're going to treat it the same way. Bruce Springsteen said this, one of the highest energy performers of all time. They asked him, how do you bring so much intensity, or how do you bring so much energy to every concert you're in? And he said, I tell myself two things. Number one, this is the biggest concert of my life, but it's only rock and roll. So you see how he balances it out? He does say it's the biggest concert of my life, but he balances it by saying it's only rock and roll. So he stays even keel. The surgeon who operated on Bill Clinton, they interviewed him and they said, how did you operate? How were you able to perform a successful operation knowing you were operating on the former president? And he said, I just treated him like he was any other patient. So we kept an even keel, and that's the mark of professionals. They don't go up and down. There's no peaks of intensity and then peaks and valleys, right? It's always peaks and valleys. That's why John Wooden, who was named the greatest coach of all time, or at least of the 20th century by Sports Century and ESPN, he said, he was not a believer in pep talks. He didn't like giving pep talks before a game because the team would peak in intensity after the pep talk, and then they would bottom out. They'd hit a valley, right? It's all peaks and valleys, so we got to stay even keel the whole time. And think about it. You shouldn't be trying harder if you know you're in a rivalry game. You shouldn't be more aggressive. Because my question is, why weren't you planning to be aggressive against everyone? Why did you need, or if like someone, let's say you're in a competition, someone does something dirty, they elbow you, they give you a cheap shot, and then you're like, now I'm going to really try hard, right? Now I'm going to really get them back. Why weren't you trying to already really get them back before? So keep it consistent. You don't want to change anything. That's the mark of the professional. Not peaks and valleys, it's consistency. And you cannot talk about consistency in performance if you don't first talk about consistency in thoughts, emotions, and behavior. It starts with a plan. Mindset makes the difference.